All right. Okay. Yeah, Erica. All right. Erica has asked for a quick review of how we. Boys and girls. Gotta get started. Erica has asked for a quick review of how we do the inverse. Now, to do the inverse, we are only doing 2 by 2s. We're only doing 2 by 2s. So let's just make up a 2 by 2 here. Let's say matrix A has entries 1, 2, -3, 7. To find the inverse, and remember that's your notation for the inverse, we first of all find the determinant. So what is the determinant of this matrix? Yes, we do this diagonal, which is 7, just cross multiply 7. This one, which is -6, and then what do we do with those 2 numbers? No, we subtract them. Now, they end up being an addition because it's minus a negative, but we're subtracting them. So we get 13. Now, what do we do with that 13? Under 1. So the inverse is 1 over 13. And then we have some new matrix we're going to build. And to build the new matrix, remember how it works? We take these 2 and switch them. And we take these 2 and change their signs. So that was a negative, it becomes a positive. That was a positive, it becomes a negative. Whatever they are, they become the opposite. And then we just take 1/13 times all of those. So basically that just means put everything over 13. If the fractions we reduce them, none of those reduce, so that's the inverse and we are finished. Okay, remember that? Taylor.
How you got 1?
You find the determinant. Remember how to find the determinant? 13 plus multiply. And then you just always put 1 over that number. So it's 1 over the determinant, whatever that is. Alright, anybody else from either the quiz I turned back or the worksheet that you had to do? Alright, we have one more topic to cover before we're finished with this chapter. So get your note sheets out. And we are going to do what's called some linear programming problems. So we are on page, oh, I got a staple through it, I can't tell what it is. 47. We're on page 47.
That was a reference point of that party did for me. Yeah, show my book.
Are we gonna have a test this week?
It's gonna be close. It'll either be the end of this week or the beginning of next week.
To like start the quarter next week? Or would they be
That's kind of up to Mrs. Edwards. I don't know. Well, you're gonna miss review for sure. Yeah. Well, probably either way, you're gonna have to make it up because if they have it Monday, you're not gonna be ready for it Monday. So you can just count on having a test to make up. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and fill in what I filled in here in the chart. But then I'm on problem number 1, page 47, 7.5. We're going to do, these are called linear programming problems. It's a word problem, so we have to read it. And the table is supposed to help you organize stuff. If the table confuses you, then you don't need to use it. There's no rule that says you have to use a table. But sometimes, as we're just beginning this, we read all that junk in the problem and it gets a little bit confusing to us, so we organize it with a table. All right, so here we go. You are taking a test in which items of type A and type B. All right, so that's what this is for. And it says, the items in type A are worth 10 points, and the items of type B are worth 15 points. Okay, where do you think in the table, the way I have it set up, where do you think I might put the 10 and the 15?
Value A and B.
Now, does it say I'm doing 10 type A questions?
10x.
No, it says each one has a value of 10. So that's going to go here. The type A questions go, 10 goes there, and 15 goes here. That's the value of those questions. It takes 3 minutes for type A and 6 minutes for type B. All right, where am I going to put the 3 and the 6? Time. Okay, 3 and 6. Total time is 60 minutes. Where am I going to put the 60? Total time. That goes right here, right? You may not answer more than 16 questions. Where's the 16 going to go? Total number of questions is 16. That's not the value. It doesn't say you can get 16 points. It says you can do 16 questions. That's how many questions you can do. Assuming all your answers are correct, how many items of each type should you answer to get the best score? So really, what's the question? What are we trying to figure out? How many A's we should do and how many B's we should do. These are your variables. X is the number of A questions and Y is the number of B questions. If you prefer to use A and B as your variables, that's okay. It doesn't matter. I'm using X and Y because I'm going to graph it, and I've got X and Y on my graph. But you can use whatever variables you want. What do I know about X plus Y? However many of these I do, what's my limit? So whatever X plus Y are, it has to be less than or equal to 16. X is how many A questions I'm doing. Y is how many B questions you're doing. Together, they can't be more than 16. Do you understand that from the problem? Which means when you add them together, you have to be less than or equal to 16. Now, what does this row say? 3x and 6y has to be what? Less than or equal to 60. Why? Well, remember, every A question takes you 3 minutes. Every B question takes you 6 minutes. So if you did one of each, that would be 9 minutes. Well, what if you did X of these? That would be 3X. Y of these would be 6Y. And when you add those together, 3X plus 6Y, there's a limit. You only have an hour. So 3X plus 6Y has to be less than or equal to 60 minutes. implied inequalities. See these lines over here? You're supposed to be writing your inequalities on those lines. And two that are implied, it doesn't say this in the problem, but does that make sense to you? What does X stand for? The number of A questions I do. Can that be negative? Can I do negative 12 questions? No. Wouldn't you agree that the number of questions I do has to be bigger than 0? And when I drew my grid, I kind of drew that already because this is only quadrant 1. Right? I didn't do this thing because you can't be here. X and Y have to be positive, so we only draw quadrant 1. Now, expression to maximize. In every one of these problems, you will either be looking to maximize a value or minimize a value. So you might want to maximize profit. If you're a business person, you might want to minimize cost. Well, what do we want to do in this problem? We want to maximize what? Your score. So we want to maximize our score. And how do we calculate our score? Every X you get is worth 10, and every Y is worth 15. So how would I calculate your score? 10X. That's it. That's what I want to maximize. I want that to be as big as it can be. All right, so here we go. We are going to graph these inequalities. Now these are already graphed. By setting it up in quadrant 1, I've already taken care of that. You don't even need to worry about it. But these I'm going to graph. Okay? So I'm going to take my blue marker and I'm going to set up my hash marks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just going to go out 20. And there's 20 on that one. All right? Now, this top equation, to graph it, this is how I want you to do it. It's real easy. If X is 0, what would Y be? 16. So I'm going to plot the point 0, 16. Now, what if Y is 0? What would X be? 16. So I'm going to plot that one. And then I'm going to do my very best to draw a straight line, and I'm really bad at this. For some reason, they always get curvy. There is my straight line connecting the 2 points that you told me. If X was 0, I plotted my Y. If Y was 0, I plotted my X. And then I connected them. Now you're going to shade. You did this last year. You're going to shade above that line out here, or you're going to shade below that line. What do you think less than means? Below. So we're going to shade this triangle. We have to be in quadrant 1. So these axes are borders. And now we've got this diagonal blue line, and we have to be below it. All right? Now I'm going to take my red marker, and I'm going to graph this one. Oh. Not with that red marker. Let's try a different red marker. And I'm going to do it the same way. Let X be 0. What is your Y if X is 0? 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What's my X if Y is 0? What is that? 20?
I'm leaving at 10.
You guys over there can't see it. I got 20 plotted out here behind the smart board. And I'm going to connect those two with hopefully a straight line. And where is that one shaded? It's also less than, so it is shaded down here. Now, do you remember from last year what your goal is to figure out now? What's your goal to figure out? Where you have both blue and red. Okay, so let's see. Where do we have blue and red? Would you say that we have blue and red in the region bounded by these 4 points? That's the blue and red section. If it's just blue or just red, I'm not interested. I need it to be both. Everybody okay? All right, so now I need to figure out what those 4 big black points are. 3 of them are easy because I already know. One of them is 0, 0. One of them is 0, 10. And one of them is 16, 0. I don't know what that one is. So, we're going to go back. I need a little more room, so I'm going to erase my chart. You got that written down. And I am going to take my 2 equations, and I am going to do substitution or elimination on them. Because what I really want to know is, where do the red line and the blue line cross each other? And if I do substitution or elimination, don't I get the point where they cross? So here we go. I'm going to do elimination because it's my personal favorite. So I'm going to multiply this top equation by -3. So I get -3x minus 3y -48. This is good review. This will probably be the first question on your test. The second equation I'm not changing. So I get 3y equals 12, which means y equals 4. And if y equals 4, then x would have to be 12. So this is the point 12, 4. Is this a big problem? Yeah. Your test will have one of them on it, and it will be a whole page, just like it is in the worksheet. We have one more step. Remember our question was, we want to get the biggest score that we can? Now, this says x and y are both 0. So what does that mean in this problem? It means you're not going to do any problems. You get no x's and no y's, no a's and no b's. So what would your score be? If you didn't do any questions, your score would be 0. Now what does this one say? This one says don't do any a's, but do 10 b's. Well, if you didn't do any a's, but you did 10 b's, what would your score be? 150. What does that one say? Do 16 A's, but no B's. Well, if you did 16 A's, and no B's, what would your score be? 160. This says do 12 A's and 4 B's. So I'm going to do 12 A's, so that would be 120, right? And 4 B's would be 60. I guess I don't need a calculator. That would add up to 180. Now, what was your question? How many should you do to get the highest score possible? Okay, here's the highest score, right? So what are we going to do?
Do
12 A's and 4 B's.
Is it, like, you know you're gonna get them all right?
Yes, it says assuming you get them all right. Yeah, that's a big assumption, but it does say that. Nothing, that's empty.
It stays in.
Yep. Remember, the chart is only there to help you fill in the numbers in the problem, and there's nothing there. Actually, what would go there would be this, but you don't know this until the very end.
So do you write?
So, okay, Ashley's question is, what do I write as my answer? Did this person have a name? You. I should do 12 A's and 4 B's. That's the answer to the question. Wow, that's huge. Let's try another one. Oh, stop it. You have to be able to do this because it's on your test. And it's worth a lot of points because it's so many steps. Anybody remember doing these last year? Ooh, they were in your book. I thought you probably did them, but maybe not. All right, so here we go. All right, so what do we got? Number, fixed range, profit. All right, the company manufactures motorcycles and bicycles. I'm going to abbreviate. To stay in business, it must produce at least 10 motorcycles each month. But it does not have facilities to produce more than 60. Okay, so wait a minute. What do you know about your motorcycles? It has to be bigger than 10 and less than 60. So your fixed range, what variables do you want to use, X and Y again? Yeah. Your fixed range is between 10 and 60 for the motorcycles. They're telling you you got to be between these two numbers. It also does not have facilities to produce more than 120 bicycles. Okay, now wait a minute. Does it give me a bottom number? So what would that be? What would that bottom number automatically be? What's the fewest bicycles you could produce? 0. So your fixed interval for bicycles is 0 to 120. Does everybody understand the 0?
Can you say last is in the
Okay, I need a low end for my fixed interval, and I can't make negative bicycles. The fewest bicycles I could make would be 0. The total production of motorcycles and bicycles cannot exceed 160. So the total number of bicycles and motorcycles has to be less than 160. So X plus Y has to add up to be less than or equal to 160. The motorcycles you make and the bicycles you make have to total to less than 160. Does that make sense to everybody? The profit on a motorcycle is $134. Where do I put the 134? Profit per motorcycle, right here. And a bicycle is 20. And what is my expression to maximize? I want to maximize what? What am I trying to maximize in this problem? No, not the number of bikes I made, the profit. And how do I calculate my profit? I'm a good businessman. I want to maximize my profit. How do I calculate it?
134x.
There you go, 134x plus 20y. Now, do you remember what we used this for? Think of the last problem. What do we do with this? We plug our points in. So we don't do anything with this for a while. We need to get this thing graphed. These are pretty big numbers, so I'm going to let my slashes be tens this time. So 10, 20, 30. So each of my slashes is a 10. Does that kind of make sense to you? You guys in econ, you're used to doing this, changing your scale to accommodate the numbers? Don't talk about econ. I'm with you on that. They do everything backwards. It drives me crazy. All right, now what are we going to sketch this time? Well, would you agree that once again implied is that x and y have to both be positive? Yeah. I'm not going to, you don't have to even write that down. I have done that by drawing it into the first quadrant. But those are always inequalities. So let's graph this one. I'll do this one in red. Now remember how we do this? The easiest way to graph these is to do what?
16, 0.
Think x is 0. So then y would be 16. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, y would be 160, but on my tens it would be 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, naturally. Here it is. And then x will be the same, right? And again, I apologize to you guys. I ended up behind the board again. But that's 16 comma 0. There we go. And where is that shaded? Down. So I'm in the triangle, right? Now, wait a minute. What else do I sketch? Does anybody have any idea what other inequalities might get graphed?
The ranges.
Exactly, the ranges. So we're going to graph this guy right here. Now, this is a little bit different. Does that equation have an x and a y in it? Just an x. So I want you to come over here where x is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and where x is 60. And I want you to draw vertical bars at 10 and 60. So we're saying x has to be between these two bars. So where am I going to shade? In between. So I'm going to shade this bar right here. Now what do you think I'm going to do with this guy? The same thing, only the bars are going to be horizontal. Because I need 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 0 and 12. Remember there were 10. So I have a horizontal bar there and a horizontal bar here. And where am I shaded? in between the horizontal bars. So all of this. All right, well, I hope yours looks better than mine. Now I have to figure out what is red and blue and green. It has to be all three. So let's see. I'm going to say this point, this point, this point, this point, and this point. I'm going to say this weird shape right here, outlined by these five big black points. I'm going to say that's my area that's green, blue, and red. Would you agree with that? All right, what do I do now? I write down those points. Okay, so some of them are easy. What's this one? Watch it, it's 10, 0. So 10, 0. What's this one?
60,
0. Those are easy. Now, this one is also easy. It is on the blue line, which means X is 10, and the green line, which means Y is 12. Well, 120, yeah. Yeah, so we've got 10 and 120. How about this one?
60.
Okay, that's a little harder, but we know X is 60, right? We know that. Now, on that red line, if X is 60, what would the Y have to be? See, that point's on the red line. If X is 60, Y would have to be 100. Look, it's on the red line. If you know X is 60, then the Y would have to be 100. Similarly, look here. What do you know about that Y? It's 120. It's on the red line though, so if the Y is 120, the X would have to be 40. So that one's 40, comma, 120. Now what? We aren't done. Now what do we do?
Plug it in there.
Now we take each of these answers and we figure out what our profit would be. So if I made 10 motorcycles and no bicycles, then my profit would be 1,340. Motorcycles. What if I made 60 motorcycles? $8,040. 8,000. You understand where that number came from? What if I made 10 of these and 120 of those? $3,740 if I did my arithmetic right. I hope somebody's doing it with me. $3,740. What if I did 60 and 100? $10,040? 10,400, I mean, I'm sorry, 10,000, no, 10,040. And finally, 4120. $7,760. All right, now we need to answer the question. After all that work, what was the question? How many of each thing should I make to maximize my profit? So I simply look over here and the biggest one wins. So you're gonna make 60 motorcycles and 100 bicycles. I will make 60 motorcycles and 100 bicycles. Wow. A lot of work. What I want you to do tonight is, you have a worksheet, not your note sheet. You have a thing, I handed it out already, I also handed you out the answers. I gave them to you separately, I stapled mine together. You are to do on the linear programming worksheet. It says linear programming worksheet. You are to do problem 1 and problem 2. They are numbered 1 and 2. So tonight you are going to have an opportunity to practice what we just did. We filled in the table for you on these first couple as you get started. But eventually you're going to have to fill in the table by yourself. Anybody have a question about your homework? All right, I want to remind you that your papers are due 3 weeks from Wednesday.